Stop scrolling right now, because the power shift in Flagstaff just went from rumor to reality. And if the whispers are true, Janelle did not just upgrade her RV, she upgraded her entire life and left the old hierarchy in the dust. If you want the real breakdown behind the headlines, hit subscribe right now, because on this channel, we do not just watch the drama, we uncover what is really driving it. You need to stop scrolling, because what is happening in Flagstaff is not just another ripple in the Sister Wives universe. It feels like the beginning of a complete power shift, and at the center of it stands Janelle Brown, a woman once labeled practical, quiet, and predictable, now surrounded by whispers of a transformation so bold that it is forcing fans to re-examine everything they thought they understood. For years, viewers watched her be dismissed for wanting a simpler life on Kody Pass. She bought an RV with a clear purpose: to build, to stay present, to invest in a future she believed in. But instead of support, she received criticism. Kody openly mocked the fifth wheel, calling it cramped, uncomfortable, beneath him. He refused to spend nights there, framing her independence as inconvenience and even disrespect. And in those moments, the audience saw something subtle yet powerful: a woman choosing autonomy, while the man who claimed leadership chose distance. The RV became more than a vehicle. It became a symbol of who was willing to adapt and who was unwilling to bend. Now, fast forward to the present, and speculation is swirling with new intensity. Rumors describe a dramatic upgrade, not just another trailer, but a luxury Class A motor coach, the kind often associated with touring musicians, executives, and high-profile travelers. A machine built for comfort, scale, and presence. And while no official confirmation has surfaced, the descriptions alone are enough to ignite the imagination. Heated floors, spa-style bathrooms, residential kitchens, technology built for seamless travel and independence. And suddenly, the narrative flips, because the very lifestyle once labeled a doghouse is being reimagined as a palace on wheels. This is where the suspense deepens, because it forces an uncomfortable question: what changed? Did Janelle quietly prepare for years, saving, investing, waiting for the right moment? Or did a new supportive presence enter her life, encouraging the dream she once defended alone? The mystery surrounding that possibility adds fuel to the fire, because fans have noticed her glow, her travel, her confidence. And though nothing is confirmed, the shift in energy is undeniable. And energy often speaks louder than press releases. The more intriguing layer, however, is not about the cost of a vehicle. It is about what mobility represents in a family structure that once depended on shared property, shared finances, and a shared patriarch. Mobility cannot be controlled. It cannot be scheduled around one central authority. It moves when the driver decides. And that independence subtly dismantles the old framework, where leadership equaled location and permission equaled belonging. Insiders and commentators alike have suggested tension may be brewing behind closed doors, not because of confirmed wrongdoing, but because contrast can feel threatening when one former spouse appears to accelerate while another appears stationary. Perception becomes narrative, and narrative drives ratings, and ratings shape seasons, and seasons determine legacy. So even without hard confirmation, the symbolism alone carries weight, and that weight keeps viewers watching, because if the woman once told she had nothing is now rumored to be thriving, then the storyline transforms from collapse to comeback, and comebacks are compelling television. There is also the psychological dimension that cannot be ignored. For years, provision was framed as square footage, stability, and financial oversight. Yet an RV, even a luxury one, challenges that equation. It says home is where you park it, not where you are anchored. And if that anchor once represented authority, then lifting it represents something else entirely, something closer to self-direction. And self-direction changes power balances. And when power balances change, reactions follow. though it is important to emphasize that no verified statements confirm jealousy, anger, or accusations. The fan discourse itself reflects how strongly viewers interpret symbolic shifts, and interpretation fuels engagement because audiences project meaning onto visible choices, and visible choices become metaphors, and metaphors sustain curiosity. Consider how different the optics appear. One image suggests a large, fixed house filled with memories, responsibilities, and obligations, while another suggests open highways, sunsets, national parks, and fluidity. Neither image is inherently superior, yet culturally, one signals rooted hierarchy, while the other signals reinvention, and reinvention often attracts admiration, especially after perceived imbalance. For years, Janelle was characterized as the steady worker, the logical accountant, the one who kept numbers straight while others expressed emotion openly. And if that same steady figure now appears to be investing in experiential freedom, it reframes practicality as patience. Perhaps the RV was never rebellion, perhaps it was rehearsal. And if so, this upgrade, if real, becomes the culmination of a long arc rather than a sudden impulse. That possibility is what keeps the suspense alive, because it hints that every choice over the last decade may have been strategic rather than reactive, and strategy unfolding slowly often goes unnoticed until the final move is revealed. And here we are, watching what feels like a final move. The speculation surrounding a supportive partner, whether confirmed or not, further amplifies the tension, because partnership shifts narrative tone. If independence once appeared solitary, shared travel suggests validation, and validation redefines value. If someone new encourages what someone old dismissed, then the emotional symbolism doubles, and audiences instinctively recognize that dynamic. Yet even without romantic confirmation, the core theme remains growth after separation, and growth resonates universally. It transcends specific personalities and becomes relatable, which broadens the appeal of the storyline beyond loyal fans into casual viewers who recognize reinvention when they see it. And that broader appeal has implications for the franchise itself, because reality television thrives on evolution. Stagnation invites decline, while transformation invites curiosity, and curiosity sustains longevity. So as rumors circulate and subtle social cues multiply, one truth stands out. Mobility equals momentum, and momentum changes perception, and perception drives conversation, and conversation sustains attention, which is why this chapter feels less like gossip and more like pivot. Because if one former wife embodies visible forward motion, then the entire premise of collective dependence dissolves into parallel independence. And parallel independence invites skin-off speculation, invites fresh arcs, invites new framing. And as long as those possibilities linger, viewers remain invested, wondering whether cameras will follow the highway rather than the driveway, wondering whether dialogue will confirm tension or redirect focus, wondering whether symbolic upgrades will translate into narrative upgrades. And until those answers surface, the suspense remains suspended in that charged space between rumor and revelation. And that is precisely the space where audience retention lives, because unresolved questions encourage viewers to stay until resolution. And resolution may still be miles away, but for now, the image of a once mocked lifestyle transforming into a symbol of autonomy is enough to keep attention locked. Because at its core, this unfolding story is not about horsepower or marble finishes. It is about agency, about choosing direction, about reclaiming narrative. And when someone reclaims narrative after years of shared authorship, the story never remains the same. And that shift is why this moment feels bigger than a vehicle. It feels like the beginning of a new era, one defined not by who holds the house keys, but by who holds the steering wheel. And that image alone keeps fans from clicking away, because it suggests that the road ahead may be longer, brighter, and far less predictable than anyone expected. As this story continues to unfold, the focus inevitably shifts from speculation about upgrades and symbolism to the emotional aftershocks that ripple through every remaining connection, because whenever one person visibly evolves in a public family dynamic, the reaction from those who remain becomes part of the narrative. And in this case, the contrast feels sharper than ever. For years, the framework appeared stable, at least on the surface. One legal marriage, one primary residence, one centralized authority, and multiple branches orbiting around it. Yet when branches detach and demonstrate momentum of their own, the gravitational pull changes, and that shift is what keeps viewers analyzing every interview, every expression, every carefully chosen word. While it is essential to clarify that no verified statements confirm private arguments or financial accusations, the perception of imbalance alone has created an atmosphere of tension in fan discussions, because perception drives engagement, and engagement sustains relevance. What makes this phase different is that the symbolism now extends beyond lifestyle choice into identity reconstruction. For a long time, Janelle was framed as the steady, logical partner, the one who managed numbers, maintained calm, and tolerated unpredictability from others. But when that same person appears to embrace expansive mobility, the quiet steadiness begins to look like long-term preparation rather than passive acceptance. And that reinterpretation challenges the old hierarchy in subtle yet powerful ways. Because if patience was strategy, then departure was not impulsive, it was calculated, and calculation carries authority. The potential presence of a supportive companion adds another emotional layer, not because it confirms rivalry, but because it reframes companionship. If someone new encourages exploration where someone old expressed resistance, the symbolism writes itself yet again. No official confirmation validates specific romantic details, and speculation should remain speculation. However, even without confirmation, the thematic shift toward affirmation rather than criticism resonates deeply with audiences who recognize the difference between coexistence and partnership, and that recognition strengthens viewer investment. Meanwhile, the remaining household in Flagstaff inevitably becomes part of the comparative lens, because stillness beside motion amplifies both. Neither is inherently superior, but culturally, movement often reads as progress, and progress draws admiration. When public reports mention financial obligations, property considerations, and long-term planning, the discussion naturally expands into questions about sustainability and legacy. Without asserting wrongdoing, it is fair to observe that public records about property taxes and land development have fueled conversation about liquidity and resource management. Yet facts about private finances remain private and should be treated responsibly. Still, the visual juxtaposition of fixed property and rolling independence becomes an easy metaphor, and metaphors sustain storytelling because they simplify complex realities into digestible images. One house planted firmly in Arizona soil, and one coach potentially crossing state lines with sunrise as backdrop and sunset as destination. And in reality television, symbolism often outweighs spreadsheets because viewers connect to narrative arcs more than to line items. What intensifies the suspense further is the possibility of on-screen acknowledgement. Will future episodes address the contrast directly? Will interviews clarify motivations? Will conversations reveal vulnerability or defensiveness? Until those answers appear, the audience fills gaps with interpretation, and interpretation fuels retention, because unresolved tension keeps attention engaged. This is not about hostility, it is about evolution, and evolution can feel unsettling, especially when it unfolds publicly. The idea that mobility represents emotional autonomy becomes central to the storyline, because mobility implies choice, and choice dissolves dependency structures that once seemed immovable. When someone who once navigated shared decision-making now controls direction independently, the power map redraws itself quietly but unmistakably.
That redraw is what captivates viewers because it suggests that endings are not collapses, but pivots, and pivots generate curiosity about destination. The larger implication touches the franchise itself because longevity in reality programming depends on reinvention. Audiences eventually tire of repetition, but they lean into transformation. And if this chapter symbolizes reinvention, then producers face a crossroads. Follow the stationary narrative of legacy or follow the moving narrative of growth. Either option carries potential, but only one embodies forward motion, and forward motion aligns with cultural fascination around self-discovery, post-separation empowerment, or becomes unavoidable, because roads imply choice, intersections imply decision, and every mile marker implies distance from what once was and proximity to what could be. And in that space of could be lies the reason audiences stay until the final frame, because transformation, when authentic or even perceived as authentic, carries magnetic pull. And as long as that pull persists, the conversation will not fade, it will accelerate, just like the image of a coach heading toward open horizon, leaving behind questions that only time and perhaps future episodes can answer. If this really is the era of reinvention, then what we are witnessing is not the end of a marriage, it is the rise of a whole new chapter, and the road ahead looks very different from the driveway left behind. If you want exclusive updates and the full story as it unfolds, make sure you hit subscribe right now, because we bring you the drama before it becomes tomorrow's headline.